Greetings, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending. This is the Film Gathers panel discussion. We're so grateful to have you all here and have this discussion with these incredible panel members and just open up this discussion about Indigenous food sovereignty and health. I hope everyone had a chance to watch the movie Gather. It is of course still open until the 26th, so there's still time to see it if you have not seen it yet. We are going to record this panel discussion and it will be available on our website afterwards at zeitgeistarts.com. So please share it with your networks and for others that have not had a chance to attend today. Just a little bit of a welcome and nuts and bolts. Zeitgeist is an arts and community development organization that works to build a healthy and thriving community for everyone. Today's event is part of Zeitgeist Bus Bike Walk a Month, which is a month-long series of events aimed at encouraging active living and people-powered modes of transportation. I just want to take a moment to give a big shout out to our sponsors that have made this possible: St. Louis County, Healthy Northland, the Statewide Health Improvement Partnership, United Healthcare, Essentia Health, Maurice's, AAA, Minnesota Power, EHR Go, as well as the efforts of the Bus Bike Walk Committee. I would also like to thank the team behind the film Gather for this powerful and inspiring film, and I encourage all of you to visit their website at gather.film to support their work and learn more about Indigenous food sovereignty. And most of all, thank you to this incredible panel of people joining us today and for doing such important work, truly life-saving work in our community. LeAnn Littlewolf, Kaitlyn Walsh, Alexandera Houchin, Hope Flanagan, and Jessika Greendeer. I appreciate your time and your willingness to share your stories and your thoughts on this important topic. We will be offering a Q&A at the end of the discussion, so please post your questions in the chat bar and we will read them out loud during the Q&A. If you would like to submit questions anonymously, you can do that also on the chat bar by just sending it to our host, Stevie Twinning, and she will be able to read those out at the end. We are so glad to be able to share this film Gather and this panel free of charge. If you would like to help support future events like this, you can donate at the link in the chat. We are also linking the websites to our panelist organizations. This is a really challenging time. If you have the ability to support the important efforts of everyone here, I'm sure it'll be greatly appreciated. I also wanted to note that this film and discussion are part of Zeitgeist's new pandemic initiative to transition our independent movie theater cinema to a virtual format, Cinema 2.0. So you can go online and check out the long list of movies we have available for viewing, and you can always rent our movie theater for your own personal screening if you do want to come in person and see a movie in a safe way. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to collectively acknowledge that although we are physically apart, Zeitgeist in the city is built on land that was originally Anishinaabe King and is home to the Anishinaabe, the original stewards of this territory. This land was ceded by the Anishinaabe in the 1854 treaty and historically and today holds great significance for the Indigenous peoples. We are committed to uplifting the name of these lands and community members from these nations who reside alongside us. So, with that, I'd love to get started and introduce our panelists. Joining us today is LeAnn Littlewolf with the American Indian Community Housing Organization, Kaitlyn Walsh, Fond du Lac Season Extension Specialist, Alexandera Houchin, local cyclist and part of the Fond du Lac Planning Division Fellowship, Hope Flanagan, Dream of Wild Health Community Outreach and Cultural Teacher, and Jessika Greendeer, Dream of Wild Health Seed Keeper and Farm Manager. So I think we'll just get started with the panelists, if they could please share their name, organization, a little about your background and your work or area of interest. And let's get started with LeAnn Littlewolf and then we'll go to Alexandera.
Yeah, Ani, everyone. LeAnn Littlewolf, Indigenous Jaganashimowin, and Indisogijik Indigo, Dash Mainga Nindudame, Idash Gazagasqua, Jimekag Neunjaba, in American Indian Community Housing Organization in Nindanaki. Nimawindan Nindaya Oma Nungum. So my name is LeAnn Littlewolf, and I belong to the Wolf Clan, and I come from Leech Lake. And I shared with you my Indian name, Andisogijik, and I'm just really happy to be here today. At ACO, that's where I work, the American Indian Community Housing Organization. I'm the Economic Development Director, and I'm just so lucky to be here today. I'm really grateful to Zeitgeist for inviting us and organizing this event, but also to be here in the presence of the other panelists to talk about this really important issue of food sovereignty. So I just want to say miigwech.
Well, hi everyone. I looked through all of your faces and I'm just as nervous as if we were all together. Bonjour, Nindanawe Megonadug, Bongi Etogo, Ninito Jabwem, Alexandra Nindignakas Jaganashamong, Gawi Mashe, Ninga Kenamase Nindorem, Wisconsin Kaya, Jawanong Nindunjaba, Nagachiwanong Ninda. My name is Alexandra in English. I don't know very much Ojibwe. I try to use it when I can though. I'm serving a fellowship on my reservation right now. I've been placed in the planning division, so I get to get my fingers in all sorts of little projects. So I'm super honored to be here with all these rad ladies and all 81 of you participants too. So thanks, that's all I got for now.
Thank you. Let's have Kaitlyn and then Jessika go.
Abuju and Dinaway Maganadok, Kaitlyn Walsh and Indigenous, Migizi and Dudem, Nagaji, Wanang, and Dunjaba. Hello, all my relatives. My name is Kaitlyn. I'm Eagle Clan, and I am a descendant of Fond du Lac. I come from Mijwakwe, or Big Woman, or Elizabeth Church, as her name appears on the original Wad E list of this reservation. I also come from Eva Katie, who I was named after, who harvested Manoman. And I come from Asadam, or Leland Devi, who started the Gitagan program, or the garden program, here on this reservation. And I'm also the season extension specialist for Fond du Lac. So I get to grow food out at Gitaganing, so the gardens, which is a farm that Fond du Lac bought back a few years ago and now has Fond du Lac families growing out there, and individuals, Anishinaabe individuals. And I'm also going to be helping establish a deep winter greenhouse out at Gitaganing as well. And that's all I'll say for now. Miigwech, everyone.
Kijan Kishana Hini Karegiwina Ho Changrajada Gisada Sadich Maninga Ingade, Maikre Rajada Jessika Ga Ingade. I greet each and every one of you. I'm so honored to be here, a part of this panel. I'm Ho Chung from Wisconsin, and I currently am the seedkeeper and farm manager at Dream of Wild Health, located in Hugo, Minnesota. The work that I do revolves around not only helping to steward our indigenous seed collection, but also working on creating food access and food security for our Native population in Minneapolis and St. Paul. So thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to being a part of this amazing panel. Thank you.
Oh, ginunda uju ginawa and gitchimin wayne dan jinundawa ginawa ga gigidama ojibwe moing. So happy to see Jessika just now speak. She's my co-worker at Dream of Wild Health, and she works with Dream of Wild Health Farm and leads the farm with indigenous foods, food sovereignty, rematriation, and land restoration. Does an awesome job. And I've been an elder there at the farm for, this was my 13th summer. I wanted to apologize about old lady, and I was trying to get in through Google Meets and it wasn't working. I teach language, culture, and foraging at the Dream Wild Health Farm. There's all sorts of stuff, even when the snow's on the ground. This week I was out picking snowberry and leatherleaf, and we're off to head out to try to get some partridge this afternoon, some rough grouse this afternoon. So there's always issues and concerns and thoughts about food. So I'm really grateful and was so happy to see this film. How Buju Nindinwe Magani Duk, Nudanensi Kwe Indigo, Mikanagnin Dudam, Tawandish Konigining and Dunjaba, Miajiguan Giga Gigere Ma Ojibwe Moing on Zam, we Kiknu Mage Ma Dream of Wild Health thing. Miigwech Bizendawayeg. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, everybody, for introducing yourselves and for sharing a little bit about your work. I want to talk about Gather. I absolutely loved this film. I thought they did such a great job clearly and powerfully laying out the direct correlation between generational trauma and violence and racism to the contemporary health outcomes and disparities that we see. I also found this movie inspiring and hopeful and loved how they are using food and food sovereignty as a solution for change. So I would just love it if you could share your thoughts and reactions to the film Gather, and perhaps how these themes resonate locally.
I'll start talking first. So many reactions to this film. In fact, like the first time through, I cried quite a bit because a lot of these things touch so close to home. They mentioned early on in the film how some of the diseases that are prevalent in Indian country are the physical manifestations of colonialism. And you look at like the destruction of our food systems and how new that is for us and how recent the diet shift has been in many of our communities. It's new, and we have all these diseases, and it broke my heart to watch, but also I felt very empowered to get more involved and to keep doing what we're doing and asking questions and sharing whatever we have. Plus, like, okay, so I'm talking early on to get those nerves out. I swear it takes like 5 minutes to like calm down, let the coffee like sweat out of my system. I had actually heard about this film from Kaitlyn. I get to work with Kaitlyn a lot in the planning division. So Kaitlyn, I don't know, maybe you can talk about some of your feelings about the film.
Yeah, miigwech Nijikwe. Yeah, the biggest thing for me is just, right from the opening scene with, is it Twyla and her niece, and, the music that comes in, it just hits you right in the heart because you know that, this was something that our grandmas went through, and then it's something that we're now going through. And that was one of my biggest takeaways was that, we're very much experiencing the impacts of historical and ongoing genocide and colonization in our communities. And it's, it's our past and it's also our present right now. And I just see so much, our fight for survival, our fight for our foodways, it's happening right now. One big quote that really stuck with me watching it, maybe the 6th time yesterday, was the Apache chef who was talking about the Cafe Gojo and saying, you can see people in the process of changing their lives. And that really struck me because that's very much where I am. I'm in a phase of learning and reconnecting alongside Nokomis, my grandmother. And it's beautiful to see the healing there. And I hope that for all of my relatives, Indigenous or not. And I do just want to remind everyone that, there's ancestral trauma that we're all healing from, and there's also trauma that we're experiencing every single day that we're healing from, and our foods are so key to that. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Hope, I'm super curious to hear what you thought about it. I'm super
Oh,
honored to be on a panel with you. P.S. I feel
oh,
so
thank
privileged.
you. Again, forgive me for being so bad at technology, but oh my gosh, it made me really happy. I'm so honored to work with some powerful people at Drewald Health, and one of our farmers, or one of our seed farmers, is White Mountain Apache, and she's real knowledgeable about her ways. So when I was watching that video and I saw that elder lady who was doing the same things that I do, I'm like, hey, is that ever nice? It made me so happy to see that. And I loved when she was after food and she was kind of like, uh-oh, people might not like our indigenous foods because they might be a little iffy in the non-native mind. It reminded me about one time we had a big native foods cook-off, and I was serving muskrat, and it has a beautiful flavor, but sometimes it's not looked at as like people go, hey, that has the word rat in it, you know, and it's like, no, it's one of our traditional foods, and it really is delicious. So it made me really happy to see those young men from the Yurok tribe, and that they were feeling empowered and strengthened enough to go and really stand up and do their work and learning their work, and to see the tribe coming together at White Mountain Apache doing that work of going out and supporting the full circle of connecting sovereignty. And I believe it's possible. I see it happening. So boy, does that make my heart sing. It feels like it's that return to how things used to be, where you come into this world from the spirit world with teachings about you're here for a particular reason. And when you find that path, when you get your name and you start being gifted responsibilities, you start working in that direction to come and support the people in the best way you can. So that was just a beautiful thing for me to see that. And it inspires me, because I'll wake up in the morning with these thoughts in my mind about, okay, food sovereignty, what are new ways that we can look at this? And almost on a daily basis, something will come like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be great if one of the residents started like a game farm, and they were restoring populations of the birds that have been diminished, you know, where you don't see much grouse anymore, you don't see many quails anymore, and then, you know, those are beautiful food sources. Or looking at rabbits, who are amazing sources of protein that hardly anybody is using anymore. You go to a grocery store, you have to pay $35 for one rabbit. You know, these are beautiful ways, if we restore our old thinking about food, about sharing foods, and making sure that those populations are healthy and strong. And even whitefish, I was trying to go whitefish netting 2 weekends ago, and I didn't have any luck, but I went and I tried. And I remember when I was young and everybody was broke, you know, people really went out with a clear mind to catch a lot of whitefish, and then you smoked it up and you shared it with all your relatives. So those means are out there, and I know I'm talking about meats right now, but the plants are the same way. We have to do our thank yous for the plants, the birds, the animals, because I think we're in a time where things are shifting in a major way. And there were prophecies about this time. And we have to think about our gratitude, put our gratitude out there, be really intentional about, we're part of this web. There's not one strand that's way important and the other ones aren't. If we look at what's happening, we're seeing a shift with the plants. We're seeing a shift with the animals. We're seeing big shifts with the birds and the insects. We have to be mindful of that. We can do it spiritually. We can do it physically. We can try to do it politically. We can do the best we can. And I truly believe that's what's part of this process. I was told by my neighbor when I was young, if we ignore our elders and our teachers, they go away. And she was talking about the plants, the animals, and of course the physical human elders too. But those plants and elders were here before us. And if we wipe them out, like it looks like we're doing, they're not going to be there. They can't help us because we haven't showed gratitude and visiting them and honoring them and accepting their gifts and making sure we don't over harvest. How? Let somebody else talk. Sorry. You're on my favorite topic, so I might go on and on.
I love that. I love that answer. And, you know, how lucky we all are to get to hear you talking about all of those things. I thought it was super interesting, or like really important what you said about those boys in the Yurok tribe. And one of my favorite questions, I think, from the film was, how did you fight for what you have? Like, I love that. I was wondering, Jessika, what you think about that quote and how it relates to the food sovereignty movement.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, like myself, when I first watched Gather, I cried. It was so moving, empowering, and at the same time, it was there was a sadness to it. You know, like a beautiful. God, I don't want to make it sound like it was a sad cry, but you know, it was looking to see how hard there were other Native brothers and sisters, the work that they're doing around the country to help reestablish and reignite their own food sovereignty within their tribe, and you know, rekindling all those tribal foodways that they have. You know, that fighting. I definitely feel that. You know, that's sort of like a daily thing. All the work that we do isn't about us. You know, it's nothing that we're personally benefiting from. It's about taking care of one another, and not only taking care of one another, but you know, the seeds that we grow, it's about growing them for our future generations so they are able to grow those same seeds. And so, you know, a fight, you know, there's different challenges or struggles that come up, but it's always remembering that everything we do is about the future. And every, you know, the harder we work, the more effort that we put into things, and the more love that we show our plants and even our animal relatives, you know, that's all going to help continue to move us forward into what we hope the youth will be able to take up and continue with all of this food sovereignty work. I think that fight is worth it. You know, like the people who've decided this year that they were going to start growing food because they didn't know about their own food security. That's a win. And we have to remember that there's those little tiny wins that we have. And, you know, of course, bringing it back to gratitude, hope of, you know, like you do have to be grateful. We have to practice gratitude in everything that we do. And when we do that, we do see those little gifts pop up where somebody's able to take one of those figurative seeds that we've planted within them and continue to carry on that work. And that's what I know, that's the fight that I'm in. And I think it's common across the board with the panel and even some of our attendees.
I think that this one great thing about this movie is that they showed lots of different ways that food sovereignty can look, and especially depending on the geographic location and the tradition. I would love to hear from others about what you think food sovereignty means to you, and how do you see it happening locally?
I guess like food sovereignty is it's meaning a lot of different things for me personally. I've had an interesting life path and only have recently found my way back home. And for the longest time, I've been thinking about becoming a dentist because of some of the disparities in oral health. And then when I started investigating the origin of some of those disparities, it really, like, these dental health disparities started popping up when our diet shifted. And then I started investigating like why what is it that causes cavities? And cavities are really caused by sugar. And then looking at the introduction of sugar and processed foods into our diet, as you know, as a recent thing, only like 1900s, like 100 years ago, just like 3 people back, and realizing how our total health is connected to what we're eating, and then investigating like, okay, what is like, why is this stuff being put into our food, and why is this what we're eating? And looking at commodity food. Like, I ate commodity foods up until like 6 months ago. And like, I look at those foods and they're super processed. So food sovereignty, like for me anyways, is connecting to some of those foodways where food, like, I don't want to be addicted to my food anymore. And sugar is addictive. And learning how to eat again is something that is new, and I think can be addressed by food sovereignty efforts. I don't know. I just like, I'm really passionate about it, and have seen like in my research with dental health, like how food has led to so much disease in our community. I don't know. I'd be honored to hear what you think about food sovereignty, LeAnn.
Let me first, before I talk about food sovereignty, I want to kind of just give a little bit of, make some comments about the film Gather. So the first time I saw that film was at the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Conference at that Oneida Nation and First Nations Development Institute convened, usually in the fall time. And I would say the first time that I went to that conference space, that was life-changing for me, to be around people who gather food, grow food, and who have been generation upon generation, or people who are just starting again. So it was a space that was everyone who was really passionate about Indigenous food and sharing knowledge and building relationships and just being together. And so I was so lucky to be able to go to that space and then and bring ideas back to our community and to start this conversation about food sovereignty in our city of Duluth. I would say that then the next time I went to that conference, they did a screening of the film Gather, and to see a film like that shares this story, that goes into such an intimate level with people who are growing food and who are willing to share their life experiences in that way about how food has saved them. They just said like, food has saved me, and I'm going to give everything I have to growing food for our people. And they share that knowledge. And to me, that film was about our cultural values in motion around generosity and teaching and generation to generation. And when the image of like Twyla and the young girl, it just right away brought me right back to being with my grandma when I was little. And every spring, it's just one of my most powerful memories, is just every spring she had no money, she had no resources and no transportation, and we lived out in the country, and it was a big deal for us to go into town, and for her to give me the option to say, when we went to the hardware store, you could buy 1 pack of seeds, so pick out your pack of seeds, and all the time I picked out watermelon, right? And so wanted to grow watermelon, and then go back, and her land was on the edge of a swamp, so it was not great soil, wasn't great growing soil. But the fact that she made a point to take me out and to put those seeds in the earth, and that was something we did every year, and so it's like, to me, this story is about that despite all of these obstacles, the things that our people wanted to pass forth was our relationship with our food. It was relationship with seeds, it was relationship with growing those plants. And even, the plants that grow out there on their own, they're so strong in their indigenous plants, the medicine and the health benefits that they provide our people. that we're so grateful, and hope, really thank you for just getting us going in that direction around like gratitude and understanding our relationship with all of the plants are connected to the water, to the air, and we're all connected together. And then in that film Gather, when you see those young men out there on that riverbank, understanding that water rights and clean water is completely connected to our food sovereignty. So this, I mean, the film has so many layers to it, and it was so powerful to sit there in the midst of food producers who are my heroes, and the people in this movie and this film are my heroes. I want to be like them. I want to figure out how to grow food, gather food, share knowledge about food, about our plants, and just really build our community health. So Alexandra, to go to the question of food sovereignty to me is about, it's our right as people to grow and have access to our traditional foods. And it is totally tied into our original instructions to take care with the earth and to live in a certain way and to provide for future generations. So it's a really deep cultural, it's very rooted.
Thank you, LeAnn. I know you're talking about grandmas makes me just think back to a huge turning point in my life, which was going to the Indigenous Foods Expo at Expo with my grandma. And it was so beautiful. It was last October, I think, and we were just packed in this building because I think it was raining, and I remember seeing, grandma got to see some friends and relatives. I know Francois was there with the, is it Mino Baba Ma Diziwin program, or the Journey Garden, working with our youth and connecting them with our foods and medicines and learning them how to, teaching them how to market them. I remember seeing the Savage family with Spirit Lake Native Farms. I remember seeing Bill Savage there with, art made out of wigwas, and I think Sean Sherman was there giving a big presentation, and it was all these foods from, my grandma's childhood that were being celebrated, and, as beautiful as it was, I know it was also, overwhelming, and afterwards we ended up going out to the ditch banks on the res, and, I remember driving, and grandma just points out, just stops her car and points, and she pointed out high bush cranberries, and for the first time we were able to kind of share what each of us have learned about gathering, and I was like, this is how I was taught, Grandma, how are you taught? And she walked me through how we give thanks to the plant and how we gather things in a good way. And I remember we gathered rose hips, and eventually made our way down to the wild rice beds, and I don't remember everything she said, but I remember we, went up to the overlook and just looked over the wild rice beds, and I think it wasn't a great Monoman year. And so we just said a prayer for our wild rice. We said a prayer for the water. We said a prayer for all the people that would be gathering wild rice there. And I remember Grandma said something like, it's all food, and I'll never forget that. She said, it's all food. And, we laid down our asema, our tobacco, and gave thanks. And that was before I decided to move here, and before I even learned about the farm out at Fond du Lac. So that was, when I look back, it felt like, I don't know if it was Monoman calling me home or Gitchigami, Lake Superior calling me home. I don't know what it was, but I know now I'm here and I get to, learn alongside my relatives. I get to be with my grandma out at Gitchiganing and learn about our foods. Now I get to be, where my great grandma harvested Monoman, and I know one of my dreams, she had this kettle that she parched wild rice in, and right now it's in the museum at Fond du Lac, and I know one of my dreams is to use that again and rice for the first time myself again. So I don't know, I'm just grateful for where I'm at and the path that I'm on because of our foods.
I'd like to say, one of the first steps for this for me is get outside and put down your tobacco. You know, with this COVID, I swear I've been outside almost every single day, even in the snow. You know, it's been snowing here for about 3 days, and every day I'm out there looking at plants or trying to help Jessika get that greenhouse put together. So even when it looks like, oh gee, it's not as welcoming, if you get into that mindset, spend some times with the trees, with the plants, with the birds, just try to get calm enough to listen, because that's part of the way of being. You know, when you hear these prayers, the interpretation, a lot of the prayers with the tobacco is you're asking for guidance. So you might hear that song, Nigani Asema, you're just asking, please guide me. And then we have to get quiet enough to hear the guidance. So sometimes for me, like I love being out in the woods. And it's always a practice of getting to that place where I can be quiet enough to hear what I'm supposed to hear, to know that next right step of what to take. And sometimes that's that beautiful thing of being called back, like you said, like with the rice. And then you get to pay attention to what's going on with the rice. So there's tons of stuff going on with the rice right now. There's a southern subspecies of rice that has made its way up past the Twin Cities area. It's very, very tall. It's a subspecies. It may very well blend with the northern subspecies. Just north of the cities, there's some nice big patches that are arriving for the first time in a long, long time. They're coming up and offering their gift. So with climate change, we're going to see changes in the plants. And I just also want to say I feel so fortunate to be working with Jessika at the farm, because I've never met anyone before that knew the teachings behind traditional farming, which always befuddled me. I was just like, well, I know about the Awasi of the wild ones, the Awakan of the enslaved ones. I don't know anything about traditional farming. And so being at the Dream Wild Health Farm is such a treat to try to understand how this all can work together. So over there, we start at the very back, we have a pollinator meadow to revitalize the native pollinators. Then there's a native orchard, and that's to bring the fruits that take a while, but you don't have to till the land, so that native pollinators can hang in there, because the honeybees aren't hanging in there, and we need pollinators. And then we get into some areas where we have isolated traditional seeds that have been passed on generation after generation, or seeds that need to be grown out, and that's Jessika's venue. And then we're doing the bulk of heavy, you know, like let's make sure healthy food from healthy soil, because you're not going to get healthy food from unhealthy soil. You have to have healthy soil to have healthy food. So that's the next part of the farm. Then we have a greenhouse where we're getting the things going, like getting the seedlings and things like that. So you get the entire concept, you know, the circle from beginning to end. And plus with the kids, we're doing the same thing. So like this week we have them doing a chef internships, or beginning concepts of sovereignty, food sovereignty with St. Paul Public Schools. So we're trying to do that whole circle. You know, how do we keep this going, even despite what's going on in this, what appears to be the larger community? It might be a way for us to reframe things so we come back. So this week, twice, I was talking to groups, and their focus was, how do we reframe the world view about plants? And Robin Walkimner, we're from Braiding Sweetgrass, I might have butchered her name, but she talks a lot about we have to start using a different language. We can't keep using the linear language of English, because English kind of always puts things and money as number one. And for us to heal from some of this, we've got to get away from our addiction to money, because the society clearly suffers from an addiction to money and things. So a perfect way to do that is if we go back to some of our indigenous languages, because I know, like in Ojibwe, it's all about what's alive, what's not alive. and what's its relationship to you and to the creator and to the ones around you?
Hope, I love that you said, I go off on these language tangents all the time. I remember trying to explain it to somebody, and like when we all introduced ourselves in Ojibwe, we said hello to all of my relatives, but it's like to all of my relations. And like in Ojibwe, our language is structured so that we are not walking on the world or owning the world. We live in relation to it. So like I use the example of chair, like a pabuin is chair in English, but really it means a place where one sits. So the chair isn't a chair unless we sit upon it, you know, little things like that. So I'm really glad that you brought that up and think about how we live in relation to all things, not just like people, but our relatives to the trees and the rocks and all the other things
Right. Can
that
I
exist.
add to what you said? It's so beautiful because sometimes when people say Buju, Odinwe Maganiduk, or his or her relatives, or you might say Buju or Anin, Nijibimadazik, and that literally means my fellow living beings, which would be in Ojibwe the stone, like you said, a sinig, they're alive, you know, so you, the trees, of course, that little ant over there. And then there's always this possibility in the stories that it's just appearing to be a stone, you know, it can change its form. It might be something else, you know, we're just assuming, like even in your introduction, you're saying, I'm called Hope, but the true nature of my being is Nudenensikwe. So I'm giving you this image of what you see, but that might not be the truth, in that I might truly be something or someone else, you know, or another being. I might be my clan, which I'm a snapping turtle. So when you do your introductions, you're literally saying I'm a snapping turtle and I just look like a person right now. So I love that, that respect. And even when you hear your grandmas and grandpas talk, I bet you'll hear them say stuff like, oh, look, there goes deer crossing the road. They don't say a deer. They say, there goes deer crossing a road, or there goes a siman crossing the road. And that means raccoon, not a raccoon. The essence of that animal embodies all of that type of animal.
Totally. And I think that relates to our food sovereignty stuff, like having that basic knowing. I mean, I know so little language, but I remember, you know, trying to learn how to use the Ojibwe dictionary and like looking up the translation for I, but like there is not a word for I because the I belongs to somebody. It can't just be a thing floating in the world by itself. So, and then you also like brought up those talking about money and our connection to like capitalism and how that drives so much value. I'm wondering what some of the other panelists thought. There's like in the film it said money is not wealth, and I think it was somebody was talking about how wealth comes from all of the things that we have around us. I'm just wondering what some other perspectives are, like how can food sovereignty relate or translate to describing our wealth within our communities?
I'll try not to be too sickening, but I have to jump in here because we just we're talking about that with a tour I did with Higher Education Consortium on Urban Affairs, and we were talking about like back in the day, I had a student, like this young lady, she got her first year, so now she's going to have a giveaway to celebrate, and she gives away all of her things. And I remember when I was very young, going to a ceremony where there's an elder lady who literally gave away all of her things in celebration. So a very different connection with material objects, knowing full well that the spirits of the animals, the creator, the ones that are around us in Dinotaganug, the loving spirits that surround us and help us, we're going to take care of her. And that right away, people started giving her gifts like, oh, here's some bed sheets, here's a shirt. So that was our old way of thinking. It wasn't like, I'm going to have a house with 6 bedrooms and 12 bathrooms. Big, totally foreign concept.
Yeah, that's what I know. That's what I was taught, for the Anishinaabe, leadership isn't measured by what you accumulate, but it's by what you give away. And so I think about that a lot, and it makes it really easy, when we're hustling during the growing season to, spend a lot of time harvesting and bringing food to like our Ojibwe school, or bringing food to our elders in each of our districts, and just spending a lot of time and investment doing that, because that's really what drives me. And what I was taught, that's what we do kind of during this time when we're around this age. So it makes a lot of sense to me, and is motivating me. And, as we're looking at building, an egg division, we have out of Gittiganing, we have a community kitchen that's going up so people can, start their own businesses. But I know a lot of people, they're looking at, continuing, the gift economy, or just the really strong, alternative economy that we already have going. And I hope to be a part of that and make it work so it's also sustainable. So I think about that a lot.
I love this conversation, and you guys have gone through many of the different topics in the film. We're kind of coming close to the end, so maybe I'll just jump to say, what gives you hope about the future and the long-term well-being of the Native community and the planet?
I'd like to share. Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm here in Montana at SKC as a student. I'm from Alaska. I really like food sovereignty because we know it's going to be long-term. Now that there's a bunch of people that are gathering for their food sovereignty in their neighborhood, their geographical place where they live, nurturing that food, that seed is going to be there for long-term. Even though the climate is changing, we could still preserve what we have and maybe get new stuff. I wanted to share a story. My grandmother had a small porch, and she liked her porch small because it gave her more room for the little property she had for her berry bush and what she was going to plant for the year. And I didn't know it at the time when I was young. I was her berry picker, but she had a bunch of starters on her porch, tomatoes or potatoes or whatever she was growing, green beans. And I'm from Southeast Alaska, which is rain country. So if it rained and she had those starters and they're filling up with water, the water, save what she could so they wouldn't drown because they were starters. I didn't understand why she was so frantic then, as a child, but I get it now. Because there were starters, she didn't want to lose what the plants were, what she was going to get. And I'll never forget that, how important that was to her, because I never got to see the rest of the process until those pots were empty, that I realized, oh, they're empty, now they're in the garden. And so I just thought that was really amazing. As small as her porch was, she managed to save the plant starters that she started to get ready, because, like March or April is a time to start stuff before she put it in the ground. So I'll never forget that. That was a true lesson. It took years to catch on, but that's long term. That's why I'm saying food sovereignty is going to be long term when everybody gets together. I appreciate Hope and Amy's and Kaitlyn's sharing. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah, and I think that's what gives me hope too. It's even during these times, we have a plant and seed giveaway every year, and so that, band member families can grow food at their homes. And this was very early early on when I started my job, and so I got to see this huge line of people waiting for plants and seeds. And we ran out really fast. I think, you know, it started at something like 8 o'clock and ran out by 9:30. It was amazing. And so that really gives me hope to see our elders growing, seeing our community growing food for themselves as they have been for generations. And another story I wanted to share was just seeing our youth getting involved too. I was able to have my nieces visit my garden this year, and so I got to teach, you know, my little 4-year-old niece how to introduce herself to the plants and give thanks to the plants and lay down asema. And it's amazing how much even a 4-year-old will pick up. My sister-in-law sent me a video of her, you know, maybe it was a week later, when she was about to go water the plants, and, you know, without prompting, she just decided to introduce herself and give thanks to the plants. And that really is what gives me hope, I think, is just seeing all the healing with our elders and seeing our youth ready to take it up again. And the other note I wanted to say too is I know that during COVID, we have been able to go out to the woods more and be alone more. And there's, you know, some ceremony and kind of a blessing in that, because more people are asking for, you know, our traditional foods and medicines like gishik, cedar, and mushkigo bog, swamp tea, and wanting those things around and reconnecting with all of those plants and medicines. So that's been beautiful and full of hope for me.
Thanks for sharing, Kaitlyn. LeAnn, you had mentioned some hope when you were talking earlier. You are involved in so many projects. I was just wondering if you would say just a little bit more about what you're hopeful for.
I'm hopeful just because we're having this conversation today and talking about the importance of Indigenous foods. And I think, you know, in my role at ACO, I work with a team, and we're a nonprofit organization, but our role is to really try to help get things started. And so some of the things that we've done is we purchased a corner grocery store in Central Hillside in Duluth, and that grocery store had been vacant for a couple years. And so right now we're developing that into an Indigenous food market. And that really, we knew it was going to take some time to raise money to do the construction and get it ready. But in the meantime, we wanted to use that space to do community education engagement around Indigenous food. So we had some pop-up events. We had guest speakers, food experts come and talk about traditional mandamin with the traditional flint corn, the growing practices with the corn, and then the ceremony. And we just had a number of those events in that space, inviting community in, and then we gathered information about what was important to the community to see in that store space. So community input in the design of that store. And then that led to that food expo. And the expo was for our region to showcase, because we kept getting this question like, well, what is Indigenous food? And it's like pretty much everything that you eat every day, but it's been erased from, the story of our foods has not been really shared, and it's been intentionally erased. And so we wanted to kind of educate on that. And ACO has been working on that, but it's not just us. It's like all of the food producers that have been continuing to do this work over generations, coming together and working cooperatively and just really helping each other and sharing that knowledge. So, I mean, to me, that continues to strengthen, continues to grow, and I'm very hopeful about that. And I'm excited, of course, for the New England market to open, because I think what you're going to see is a showcase of Indigenous foods in that space. And it's an opportunity for our community to really develop wealth and health together, right? And so I get really excited about that. And then it's a way for others to see Indigenous strategies in action. So thank you so much, and then I pass it to another person.
I'd like to share a couple things that are giving me hope right now. ACO is fantastic. I was so thrilled when Ivy and Arnie went on their own, and I know they're super busy and I know they have a ton of things to do, but they came to the farm because they heard that we needed help in harvesting because the land was so abundant and so giving and gifting us, like Mother Earth always is, that they came on their own and collected and brought that food back to ACO. Last winter, we took some of our teenagers up to the White Earth Indigenous Farming Conference, and we got to meet that young lady whose farm runs, has the buffalo group, and our young ones through Drew World Health got to visit with her and to see what she was doing with farming buffalo out there in South Dakota. But one of my all-time favorites just got online here. She was one of our garden warriors. Then she was one of our teen leaders. And then she came back and she was a farmer all season. And she works at Morris and has done a lot of work in setting up their farm at Morris College that is so supportive. This is Felicia Galvan. So when you see a young person like Felicia, take it in her heart and say, now I'm carrying it forward. I had the privilege of gifting her a feather this summer because of her work. So when I see those young people take it, it gives me hope. But it's going to take all of us to encourage those young people to stay in there, because this is a tough time for young people. So this COVID and all the other issues that are up and about. So they're going to need us. So what we can do to help them is really important. So thanks, Felicia. Thanks for being here. And look for our young people too. Thanks.
Jessika, do you have anything to share before we maybe jump into a quick Q&A?
Yeah, you know, it's so important to make sure that we are encouraging our youth. And yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Help. When I saw Felicia jump on, I got super stoked. You know, like the hope that I get in this work is when I came to Dream of Wild Health, to see the youth wanting to pick things up and wanting to learn things. Because the truth is, you know, like I think the sad part of watching Gather was that we know those people. There are not enough people doing this work, and we need to make sure that we are teaching everything that we possibly can down to our youngest generations, so that we do have replacements in this. We can't afford to lose any more time on what we're trying to create for our own nations and our communities. And I think that it's incredibly important to support one another and see how we can help each other in our changing climate. And supporting the work, supporting the youth, and supporting all those people who came out this year and decided they needed to grow food. And that's all it takes. We need to all continue to encourage one another to plant those seeds so that our seeds won't get lost, and the work will continue to go after we go to the next world.
Thank you everyone so much for your thoughts and your input and your stories and your work. It is 1 o'clock, so I do want to be mindful of time, but perhaps there is one question we can take from the audience. Stevie?
Yeah, there are just a couple questions that I saw, but one was, how does food sovereignty play out in the larger or non-native population, and are there partnerships in between or cooperations?
I think the short answer is yes, and I know I'm part of some of those discussions around land and how we can all work together for food sovereignty. And I think an important thing that I wanted to say after watching Gather last night again is that I think that we all play a role in Indigenous food sovereignty, especially you know, here was it the land where the water reflects the clouds here in Minnesota. We are all part of Indigenous food sovereignty, and I know I just would want to encourage everyone, and especially my non-native relatives, to get to know the land that you stand on, the treaties that are here and your current role in them, and get to know the plants and the animals around you. And I know that I wanted to just ask people to kind of think about their path during this time, as we're all trying to restore this right relationship with the land. And I would ask that any stories that we shared today that you carry those with you, and whatever your path is, that you walk it. Miigwech, everybody.
That is actually another question that we had. People want to know what non-Native folks can do to support Native food sovereignty.
I'd like to say something. So, like a lot of the work that Kaitlyn and myself do are with the seeds. And, you can't have food sovereignty without seed sovereignty if we're looking at our ancestral varieties of vegetables and fruits. And I think it's great that there are people who want to help and support the work. But, we all have to remember that we all come from somewhere. And I think it's incredibly important that Indigenous people grow Indigenous seeds for Indigenous communities. And of course we have allies. Like I don't want to overshadow the work that our great allies are doing alongside us in this work. But there are other seeds that tend to get forgotten from their places of origin too. And I think when people eat their own ancestral varieties of seed, there are different cultural awakenings that happen within our DNA that we can't forget. And so I just want to give a shout out to all those seeds that are sitting places and waiting for you to come and pick them up, waiting for you to grow them and let them nourish you and your family.
I just wanted to say something along the lines of understanding what treaties are. I think our hunting and gathering rights are super important, super sacred to us as Indigenous people in this territory. So natives and non-natives are extended rights through our treaties, and educating yourself on the treaties in the areas that you live on is a really great way that you can empower yourself to help the Indigenous food sovereignty movement.
That actually does lead us into another question, and what the connection there is between those treaty reserved rights to hunt and fish and gather and food sovereignty, and what it means to Indigenous peoples.
I'd like to speak a minute about that. I was fortunate to be around driving some elders around back in the day when the ceded land question came up out of Mille Lacs about honoring the rights for hunting and fishing. One thing we've got to be mindful of is very little land, and I hate to say this, but it's true. Very little land has been set aside for our wild brothers and sisters and our relatives that sustain themselves off the woods or the prairies or whatever. And I'm going to bring this up because it just made illuminate a little bit of the earth biomass of mammals on earth right now. 36% is human, 60% are cows and pigs, 4% is everybody else. So 4% are whales, deer, zebras, lions, polar bears, everybody else. That's way off balance. So I know it's fun to think, oh, well, just go back to the woods and survive off the woods. We've got to think about other ways too. I think we have to think about, yes, we can forage, and let's make sure we're looking in terms of different ways of thinking about forage, but we have to do the work that Jessika's talking about. So for example, yesterday I was talking to a group of young people and we said, save your seeds. Whenever you eat an organic fruit or vegetable, put a bowl on your table and grow your seeds. We used to do that. We need to go back to that. Maybe all those seeds are given to somebody else who can grow them. Maybe you eat your seeds, but we have to think more mindfully about food if we're going to have this amount of humanity on the earth. And maybe we want to rethink that 60% that's cows and pigs.
Totally. I just want to also throw in there, like, my feelings about food sovereignty and treaty rights right now really, treaties remind me of how much my ancestors loved me, how much intention existed in reserving our traditional practices. So that knowing that those treaties exist, there's a lot of trauma around that, but I find hope and belief in knowing that those who lived before me cared about me enough to preserve the things that keep healthy and safe. And I feel a responsibility to do that for those who have yet to come. So I do think treaties are important. It's just a reminder of love to me.
And Hope brought up a really great point, I think, too, just about, yeah, we can't just go back to the woods. And I think partly that's because the woods as our ancestors knew them aren't there anymore. I mean, I hear stories of, you know, forests being raised overnight for logging, a lot of our environments being intentionally destroyed to disconnect us from our foods. So there is healing that needs to happen with our plant relatives too. And I forget what else I was going to say, but I think that that's important to remember too, just the role that different industries have played in disconnecting us. And if you need a reminder, I mean, you can just look at our state flag, really. It's there. It's how our country was formed, or our state was formed, rather.
Well, it is almost, it is after time. And if there is any final wrap-up thoughts that the panel wants to share, or calls to actions, what people attending this panel discussion can do right now to get involved and to support these issues. Maybe one more quick go around from each of our panelists. Go ahead.
Well, you know, I just want to thank everyone who took time to watch the film Gather. I mean, it's a powerful story. And I think, like, just, you know, yesterday I read an article in the New York Times about the Mi'kmaq are asserting their treaty rights to fish, and that a traditional fisherman, he was assaulted, and then his fish house warehouse was burnt to the ground. And so I think that, you know, it's really important to know that, to stand in solidarity with Indigenous people, and to understand our history and our connection to the land and to our food systems, and to stand with us and to assert what is right. So I would close with that. And then also just to know that there are so many people out there who are growing, gathering, and carry food knowledge, and to value that, and to really understand the importance of that. So I just want to say thank you so much for everyone being here today, and the chance to be here with you. So miigwech.
I'm too super thankful for everybody that showed up today. And I guess my final words are along the lines of everything is all interconnected. I was fortunate enough to be invited to speak with these wonderful, inspiring women. As a, you know, my background is in cycling, and I'm just starting to get connected to our food sovereignty efforts here. So knowing that food is energy, and energy propels us on bikes and through walking, and it's just all connected. So don't forget how all interconnected it is.
I'd like to say each and every one of us, I think we're here for a reason. We're here for specific reasons at this specific time. And I think this is an opportunity for each and every one of us to be spiritual warriors. And to do that, we're not only just praying and being out there and giving our thanks and doing whatever we can to support clean water systems, clean food systems, clean soil, and and that is huge. But we also are taking our young ones with us, or our family members, or, you know, like I said, the Nijibimadazik, the fellow living beings. Let's take them with us and be warriors in that battle to support life, you know, life with a capital L. That's what that's what I'm thinking, you know, that's my reason for being here on this earth. That it's no coincidence that I just showed up here and survived some pretty rough stuff to get where I am today, but that now I give back by doing what I can to pass on what's been readily given to me, and it's been a gift. So I want to say thank you for all of you for putting out your thoughts, and those prayers are so important. Keep putting those prayers out there. Chimigwich.
Yeah, thank you, Zeitgeist, for the opportunity to, you know, not only screen gather for the community, but for the opportunity and platform for these amazing Indigenous women to come together and share some of our thoughts about our work and the way forward. So thank you for the participants for taking time out of your day to be here with us. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you all in person if we haven't already. So thank you and stay warm.
Yeah, Chimagwech to everyone. It's such an honor to be here, and I thank you all so much for listening. And I know we talk a lot about, you know, the historical and, you know, current atrocities, and I talk about those because I know a lot of us aren't taught those things, or just, you know, aren't in the right circles to learn about those things. But I know I also just, yeah, I see a lot of hope, and I want, you know, my relatives, my kin to, you know, remember where you come from and know that you're always welcome home. And I hope that, you know, all the stories and all the knowledge that was shared today helps you on that path. So yeah, because again, I love you. I treasure all of you so much. Miigwech.
Thank you, Midwich, to our panel. A huge virtual round of applause for LeAnn and Kaitlyn and Alexandra and Hope and Jessika. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Don't forget, the screening of Gathering is still available for free at Zeitgeist until October 26th. So that's zeitgeistarts.com/cinema/cinema2. Please share it with your networks. This is such an important story to share. We'll be posting this panel discussion online on Zeitgeist's website and also on our social media, so you can share that as well. Thank you again, and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Miigwech. Gigawabman.